Hey everyone, Rohin here, and thanks for watching the live stream. And I've got a very special guest with me, Morgan Taylor. You might have noticed Morgan in a few different Facebook groups, and so throwing out all those knowledge bombs. So we just decided together, why not have a complete live stream on HARO, hire a reporter, that process. It's because I know it's a pretty tricky process in itself. So I asked Morgan, why don't you prepare some slides? We can have a quick live session with the community so that everyone can have a look and they can give it a try. So thanks for coming, Morgan. I really appreciate that, Mike.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, just to be clear, so I'll be going through it, right, and then nobody's going to talk until afterwards. Is that kind of how it works, or?
Yeah, that's what the process is. That's how
okay, cool.
we do it. And so yeah, I'll give the screen to you. You can just go through the entire process, go and share all the screens and everything together. And that's it. And then we can take any kind of questions or something at the end. Eventually, this live stream gonna be having a replay system in the group too. So maybe you can engage it later on with the community in case they're having any kind of questions or they want to touch base with you also for any kind of help with the services you provide. Anything, I mean, like whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to give the screen to you, Morgan, and then we can get that started. All right, so it's an option from the menu. It's a share screen, so you can take the screen, and that's it.
Cool, sounds good.
All right, so.
All right, cool. Does this look okay?
Yep, all good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so as Rohit said, my name is Morgan Taylor. You know, I'm one of the co-owners at Jolly SEO, along with Greg Heilers, who some of you may have heard of. He's pretty active in a lot of the Facebook groups. We've been doing primarily a done-for-you HARO service for about 2 years now. You know, the goal here is to get, you know, a lot of people like the PR aspect, but generally our goal is for SEO value and backlinks. You know, so that's kind of what we specialize in, and we've learned a lot over 2 years. And basically, that's just what I want to share with everybody. You know, some of the tips for how to set up a good HARO pitching profile, how to set up a good pitch, and so on. Yeah.
All right. Great.
All right. So I guess for anybody that's not familiar with HARO, it stands for Help a Reporter Out. I'm sure anyone who's here has already kind of, you know, heard of this platform already, but it's what we consider the, you know, sort of premier free of charge platform for earned media. And that's a term that at least we use for these kind of, you know, featured quotes, authoritative quotes that are featured in articles. Again, they're not paid backlinks or paid features, but we're just contributing as experts on a subject. The goal is usually to get a backlink, but not always. And there are other platforms, just in case not everyone's heard of them. There's SourceBottle, which is a really good platform for Australian-focused websites. You know, most of the publications that you'd end up on there are .au. And then there's ProfNet, which is another one we use, which is a paid platform. It's not always the most appropriate for, you know, if you're just doing this as yourself, as a business owner. It costs a few thousand a year, but there are some good opportunities there as well. So, and I have this little professionally done graphic here, but basically the idea is that HARO connects writers looking to cite sources to sources looking to be quoted. And this is another thing that, you know, again, most of you are probably clear on this, but not everybody is. If you're going into HARO looking to get anchor texts, you know, specific anchor texts or specific landing pages, you might have a difficult time. Generally, all of this is going to be in the hands of the editor at a publication. So they prefer to quote people using branded anchor texts. Again, you'll have the quote and it'll go to the home page. So we have an example here. This is somebody at an agency. And again, this is how the quotes usually appear, just to be completely transparent on that. If you do try to slip in links to specific landing pages, it can work, but you can't go into that anticipating it'll work. You have to assume that the editors or the journalists will end up citing you with a branded anchored homepage link. So this is kind of my dissection of a HARO newsletter. When you sign up for HARO, it's free. You're gonna set up an email, you'll provide your company name, your name. You'll have to pick a representative, either yourself or somebody who's sort of a figurehead of the company. But again, it's free. Once you sign up for that, you're going to get newsletters each day. So there's 3 of them each day, every weekday, besides for US holidays. So, and they're all organized around EST, which is East Coast United States time, which is one of the major things that's inconvenient for a lot of international HARO users. Even for myself, being on the West Coast in California, everything is 3 hours ahead. So just keep that in mind. You know, when we get these morning HARO newsletters, it's basically 5 a.m. my time. It's really early, but if you can stay on top of that, you'll have a lot of success. Each newsletter is going to contain about 80 to 150 queries, give or take. Sometimes, generally, the morning newsletters are going to have fewer opportunities, and then they get greater as the day goes on, because more journalists from around the world are kind of putting in their their requests. And then we use the word query. So each query is a journalist looking for a contribution request, and they'll usually indicate what publication they're working for, but not always. Sometimes it'll be categorized as anonymous, but it might also say, so-and-so from Business Insider. So here's some examples here. You can see this one up here in biotech and healthcare is from mom.com, but then the next one is anonymous. And the anonymous queries, oftentimes it's going to be maybe a lower level publication, but not always. There are ways to tell that apart, and I'll go into that later in the presentation, so you can decide which anonymous queries are actually going to be worth your time. The largest sections are going to be the business, finance, tech, and then general categories. General, a lot of times that includes, personal lifestyle, fitness, health, that kind of thing. But those are sort of the big 4. And then there are some other smaller niches like travel and so on in the newsletter. But again, this is just one example of a newsletter that we get 3 times each day, sent directly to your email on every account that you sign up. So selecting which queries to pitch. This is kind of the key, because this is really all about maximizing the time spent with HARO. Most of our clients come to us not necessarily because they don't know how to pitch HARO, but they just don't have the time. And if you can end up sorting out the garbage queries from the queries that are actually going to be relevant and obtainable, then you're really doing yourself a big favor, especially if you're doing this yourself. So what I say here is selecting the right query is not just about meeting your link needs, but it's also about being someone who's actually qualified to provide insight on the query. And these are the top 4 factors that I take into consideration if I'm going to hit a query. So people who are fairly HARO savvy probably know this already. Timing is a big factor. You can see when the query came out. The fresher the query, the journalist request is, the better. And that's just kind of standard practice. In fact, a lot of people sit there waiting for the newsletter to come out just so that they can hit the Business Insiders, the Huffington Posts, all that stuff, the New York Post, right as soon as it comes out, because they want to be the first person responding to that query. They're more likely to get noticed. But what we found is it's also beneficial, say you miss that first window, that first day, it's better to wait until the query, if you've already missed that window, it's better to wait until the query is right about to expire rather than, say, submitting something midway through the lifespan of the request. Because at least if you submit it at the end, there's a high likelihood you'll end up at the top of their inbox if they haven't already decided which query they're going, or which pitch that they're going to actually use for their article, or pitches. A lot of times there's several. And then another thing, this is number 2, this is kind of, in a way, part of our secret sauce here, is learning the link policies of the different journalists and publications. So the longer you work with HARO, the more you'll learn which publications are actually going to give you the type of placement you want. And it's not just about publications, it's also about journalists. So some publications, say Forbes, they're only going to give no follows. If you're interested in no follow links, great. But if you're not, you can just stop, spending time pitching to that publication, because you're never going to get a do follow link. And there's always a policy with almost every publication that you'll see on HARO. It's just something that we've learned over 2 years how to we've identified almost every publication, but for yourself, it pays to take that into account. And it doesn't just apply to publications, it can be journalists too. There's specific journalists at each publication, they each have their own policy. They might give you some runaround about how the publication doesn't do links, but really, other journalists that work with the same publication might be able to slip links in. So you got to take note of that as well. And that'll save you a ton of time. If your goals are just to get, links without a no follow tag, then that's really the best favor you can do yourself. And then number 3 is qualifications. And this comes down to selecting who, either yourself or a figurehead that you've chosen for your site or company, who is going to be the one that you're setting up to actually answer these queries. You can see in this one here, this is an example query I have up just so everyone can see. So they look like, but this is just a classic kind of thing you'll see. And then at the very bottom, it says requirements, CEOs and or founders only, please. It pays to read that, because if you don't fall into that category, there's no point in wasting your time pitching to this query. And it's also, and I'll go into this again later as well, but it's also why we recommend that you set up either a C-suite executive or somebody with very niche specific qualifications to do this kind of outreach. And then the final thing is relevance. This is more for you than anyone else. Is the query publication relevant to your website or business? Not only are you more likely to land that placement, but it's also going to give yourself more SEO benefits if it's something related to what you're doing. And we have a cool little chart. This is what we used for our team. We kind of tried to make this as into a numerical system. Where 6 being the highest, that means the query itself is relevant and the domain is relevant, and it goes down and down and down. And then ones where you can see that a query isn't relevant and the domain is not relevant, it's probably not worth your time to pitch unless it's one of those publications that gives out links very easily, or it won't provide you the same kind of value. So it's worth taking this into account. Again, this isn't like guest posting where you can craft the article along your own lines. You really need to make that decision as to what's relevant before you even make the pitch in the first place, because after that, it's out of your control. And I'm sure this video will be saved, and I'd love everyone to check out this chart again. So, and then maximizing your success. These are our tips for really, again, maximizing the time you spend on HARO pitching. So one thing I would say that I think really gets undervalued is everyone focuses on the pitch itself. What am I doing wrong with my pitches and so on. But really, there's a lot you can do before you even send your first pitch. And it's all about setting up your account, your figurehead or yourself in the right place before you even begin outreach. And I'll say this, number 1, the credibility factor cannot be overstated. And this is especially true when it comes to if you're going for publications like Business Insider or things that are household name publications. You know, these journalists are going to do their research a lot of times. So if you're using somebody that has no detectable association with your brand or your company, that might just be what puts them off from using your quote, even if it's a good quote. So this is our standard practice. We need people that, you know, anyone we work with, they need to have a LinkedIn profile that mentions the business, mention it on your LinkedIn profile, and also mention this figurehead or person on your website's About Us page. That way it's extra clear to any journalist that you are in fact associated with this brand, this company. You know, you're not just maybe a made up persona or somebody who's maybe doesn't have permission to be pitching or whatever it may be. But it always looks good to have as many, it helps to have as many things backing up your credentials as possible. And then number two here, we get this a lot. People, especially with affiliate sites, they want to, you know, I get it. You may be wanting to sell your website or business at some point, and maybe you don't want to be as, you know, front and center. So fake personas are always proposed to us. And I'll say this, unless it's exceptionally good and exceptionally clean looking, it's not especially convincing to journalists. So if you're really set on using a fake persona, you need to put a lot of time into it before you actually do that. And then number three, this is super easy. Use G Suites or Outlook for your outreach emails when possible. It'll allow you to do a nice, clean HTML signature where you can insert links to your website in the email signature. And you can also get nice looking headshots in the profile email. You know, this is all stuff to set up your, you know, the appearance, the credibility when you're doing the outreach. It makes you stand out among all the other emails that may not have a profile photo, they may not have a good signature. You know, all of this stuff counts when you're competing with 100, 200 other pitches for the exact same query. And then number four, always create a named email. This is more of something I would advise for people who have clients or agencies. You know, it's always tempting to maybe go with a PR at, you know, Jolly SEO or whatever, just to give an example. But you're going to have better results if you actually have the full name or some version of the name of the person or figurehead that you're writing on behalf of. It looks like their genuine email. And again, more convincing to journalists, especially at those higher tier publications. And then the final thing here is when you're selecting a figurehead for the company. Okay, so C-suite executives are always a solid choice, but it's also good if, especially if you're in a fairly specific niche, to have somebody that you can write on behalf of, or they can write themselves, that has certifications in the field. You know, think about some of the maybe health related websites or companies, fitness. You know, if you have a personal trainer that can submit pitches, it's very easy to land those really highly relevant placements on say like LifeWire or Ask Men or something like that. So it's worth considering having somebody with actual credentials in addition to a C-suite executive or owner. So this is maximizing success to the actual pitch. This is, I think, what a lot of people want to see. But again, it's not, to me at least, it's not as important as the stuff I went over in the previous slide. So this is an example pitch that I deleted, you know, the names and companies and so on, but this is a good example of the length of a pitch you'd want and the general flow of it. You know, you always in the you know, in the email, you always want to state immediately your credentials right in the beginning and in the beginning of the pitch itself. You know, and here we're saying a certified mental health professional, so the journalist sees it immediately. They know that you are qualified to answer the pitch. Using bold text in the right way can be really helpful because it really highlights the journalist which part of the pitch you think is worthy of the soundbite. Again, they're probably only going to use one sentence, maybe two sentences, maybe three. So you really want to highlight what you think is a good soundbite that they can take out of the pitch. Again, you don't want to make it too long. And then a really important thing down here is that we have all of our links to our social media, headshot. You always need to have a headshot link in there as well. If you can add Twitter, great. And then you'd want your website hyperlinked as well. So this is something that I'd always recommend to just set as an automatic signature for all of your pitches or all of the accounts that you're using for outreach. And this is kind of going into more depth about what I was just talking about on the last slide. And this is, again, based on our 2 years of experience. So emphasize your credentials wherever possible. You know, the subject line. And that's what I was pointing out in the previous slide. You know, expert on so-and-so speaks about so-and-so subject. Mention it in the beginning of the pitch and then again in your signature. Keep the pitch fairly short. Again, you know, I can't stress this enough. Journalists will read literally hundreds of pitches on certain queries, especially for the big sites. You know, it's no joke. It might be 200, 300 pitches on a single query. So the quicker they can scan through your pitch and pick up a good line that they can use in the article, the better. So sending 3-4 paragraphs on a pitch, even if it's well researched, is kind of not only wasting your time, but it's actually lowering your chance of success. Number 3, this is kind of one that I don't think gets mentioned a lot on HARO tip blog posts and so on, but it's important. You know, we understand that you're going to have to do some research when creating a pitch. You know, this may be through Google, it may be through information a client or your own company provides. But it's always better to stand out with a unique pitch than something that might be top of the Google search result kind of common knowledge. So say you're looking up something about, you know, best workouts you can do at home. You don't want to pick the obvious thing, which is maybe doing push-ups. You can think of something a little more creative, you know, like say you can do dips on your dining room table or something like that. I don't know. But the more unique it is, the better, because that means you're not making the same pitch as all of the other people that are responding to the query. So again, don't go with the first information you turn up on Google. And then number 4, this is probably obvious to most people who have done HARO on any level, but I know journalists see this a lot. Don't promote yourself, don't promote your business, don't go into how your business has done X, Y, and Z or anything like that. They're just not interested in it. You need to be providing pure value for the journalist or reader. And sometimes you can twist a pitch to fit your business a little bit more than it would otherwise. So say, you know, there's a query on, you know, automation for businesses, and say you run a pet related business. You could go into how you use some sort of tool or CRM to deal with ordering pet food, and you might even mention it in your pitch, but that's about as far as I would take it. You know, you just don't want to make it seem like you're trying to advertise your business, because that'll just be ignored. And then number 5, get straight to the pitch. Don't try to arrange interviews or refer the journalist to a client. And the very first email you send should just be the actual pitch. This is more of an agency thing, but there's no point in trying to connect the journalist to a client. They'll just almost certainly ignore that. And then always double check your signature, make sure all the hyperlinks and branding are correct. You know, this has happened to us before and it sucks. You land a placement and then you find out that the destination page is incorrect or misspelled. And it's probably a mistake made on your end. So it's always good to make sure that everything there is on point. Scaling and automation. This is definitely something that's interesting for agencies that are considering offering this as a service. You know, we've, again, experimented with a lot of things in the last couple years, and we've ended up setting up a CRM. I have an image of it here. I know it's not the biggest, but it kind of should give an idea of what we're doing. Again, here, this is the linking policy. So this is what we know about these publications, and that this is what we give to our team, so that they know that when they pitch a publication, like, these will all be do follows. And we filter out anything that is, otherwise, unless certain clients specify that they're okay with unlinked mentions and so on. You can add the DRs, and this is all information that you can get over time by working through HARO. We put up the dates and so on, and where it's from, HARO. We also use ProfNet and Source Bottle as well. So it's good to be able to, if you're doing this on a larger scale, scaling between several clients or doing a high volume, it's good to actually sort of dissect the newsletter, put it up, and then your team can just pick and choose really quickly what it is they want without having to do all of that searching themselves. It saves a lot of time. And then we've also heard of some people who are able to automate the newsletter itself. It's not something we do. We just have a couple people take the newsletter and then put this up here, and the CRM does a lot of the automation. But I know it's something that some programming savvy people are able to do, so it's worth considering. And then another thing, if you're working with multiple clients, it's always good to create a standardized onboarding process. This will be a sheet or a questionnaire that you can hand to clients that gets some background information. People are usually fairly particular on how they're represented on these placements. So that might mean that they want you to follow the information they're providing on their onboarding documents, or something similar. They'll provide you with resources. But as long as there's uniformity, it ends up making it a pretty easy setup process that you can then hand to your outreach team and get more reliable results. So, all right, yeah, so at this point, I would open it up to questions. I know it's not the longest presentation, but kind of want to hear what you guys want to say. I have a newsletter open if anybody wants to ask, if you have a niche or something and you say, like, what would you pick out of this newsletter for my niche or my business? I can help be creative with that. And then, of course, we have some links at the bottom. This is our site, jollyseo.co. That's our done for you HARO. And then we have Link Sourcey, which is going to be released shortly. And that would basically be providing people with what I just showed you, our CRM, but on a fully developed platform, along with videos and tips. And then we have a Facebook group as well about earned media, where Greg and myself both participate. So.
All right, no, that's cool. Thanks for that, Morgan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
HARO,
should I stop sharing now?
HARO definitely is one of a complicated process, what we have always seen, and it's one of a question which Ravi has actually asked. So let me just go through that question first of all. So what Ravi is saying, like, with the latest AI technologies which are coming in at the moment, so with the OpenAI, is it really worth? I mean, like, can they really go and pick any question, can generate a quick answer, and I mean, like, get an answer and give it to the journalist? Do you think that kind of thing can actually work?
I'm super skeptical. I mean, I would need to see it to believe it, but I think there's a lot more. Again, I really try to tell people not to emphasize the pitch itself so much as the best practices in setting up the account.
Yep.
The pitch length and following just some certain rules about the signatures and that kind of thing. I suppose if it seemed very natural and wasn't it wasn't creating a templated response, which would end up, the other worry there is that if the journalist starts seeing a very templated response from the same person, it's definitely off-putting. But
Yep.
I'd be curious to see what kind of pitches it could come up with.
Yep. Now we are actually testing a lot of AI kind of a thing on our internal systems as well. Sometimes they are good, sometimes not. So it's kind of a mixed things coming in. I think the AI has to take a couple more years to get and prepare a proper polished algorithm in which, like, they can interact like humans. So it's not really a proper one at the moment. So maybe in the next few years, maybe we can rely on this open AI, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'd be very curious to see. But
And that's another question. What I'm really thinking is like, do you actually, for different clients, do you go and create a different persona and a different signatures, act like a different HARO accounts, or how does that work?
So we have the clients actually create an email specifically for HARO outreach, and then our team will set up the signature, add the photo, polish it up. But generally they are actual people. We do have a few accounts that maybe can work with personas, but it's extremely rare. Generally what we'll do is just really be patient and work with the lead or the client to find the right person to represent. Also, there are people that you can find that have credentials that are willing to act as figureheads. But again, if you can get a real person, it's definitely beneficial, rather than just creating somebody whenever possible.
Yep. All right, and do the past relationship with these journalists to work as well? I mean, like, let's say you have worked for someone in the Wirecutter in the past, and then there is a different thing coming in this time, and you can simply touch base with them. So does this kind of thing actually work? I don't know if HARO do provide an internal chat system with someone or not. I'm not really sure about it.
Yeah, so it can be done, especially with some of our longer running accounts. They do have relationships with certain journalists. Not all emails are sent through the coded HARO emails. When you pitch to HARO, they don't give you the person's actual email. Of course, it's going to be a specifically generated destination. But they will a lot of times reply back with their email. Our situation is obviously that we're creating a new email for each client. So it's essentially starting from scratch every time that we set up a new client. But yeah, some of our longer term clients have, the journalists are familiar with them. So it does pay off, especially if you're doing it for your own site. It's worth doing.
I agree. And that's another one what I really want to know too. How long they usually take? I mean, like, definitely no one wants to keep waiting for weeks or so, because they should be having a proper editorial process in place too. So they probably need to wait for all the answers, and then I don't know how long they usually take to filter out all those answers, and then they reply back, all right, sweet on, good, and you got a link back to your website. So any kind of like a rough deadline or idea you got in your mind?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And actually, now that you say it, I wish I made a slide for it. But what we tell people is to expect 3 to 5 weeks from when pitching begins to when you're actually going to be seeing live links. So even though a journalist might select a pitch quickly, it can take some time for the content to actually get approved, make it into the pipeline, and then go live. And the other thing there is that, and I always tell people this because it's so easy to get discouraged when you're doing HARO, because the journalists almost never reply to tell you that you've been featured in an article. So you need to actually go out and actively search for your name, position, and so on to find these. We use Google search every day, just saying, so-and-so, X company, and it'll pick up these HARO placements, but the majority of them will not get actually brought up to you directly by the journalist, which is a shame.
That makes sense. I mean, like, people can actually use some kind of tool like brand mentions or Google alerts maybe, and I think that
could be cool. I don't recommend Google alerts. It's really bad at picking them up, but it's easy enough to. And if anyone wants to ask me about this in the group, I'm happy to share, some of the Google searches we use, but there's a few really simple ones you can use. You can just set it to check the past week, and that's the best way to pick them up quickly. Ahrefs does a decent job too, but manual Google searches are the best.
Of course, because Ahrefs has got kind of a delay in how they go and So I reckon that for 4 to 5 weeks is a pretty decent time frame to pitch and to get a proper live link to our place.
Yeah, and then once you're getting them, they'll come in steadily. That's just the initial lag time. So
Exactly. No, that makes sense. All right. So Tanvi wants to know, hey Tanvi, what is a better practice to rank your site? Is it a SEO or PR? What do you reckon? SEO, or of course, it's a free traffic all the time, but day by day, the SEO is getting harder as well. Or HARO do actually come as a part of a SEO, but that can be done as a part of PR as well. So yes, the HARO solves dual purpose. What I can really see, because obviously more dimensions, you can go and create a more reputation management kind of thing with that too. But what's your take on this, Morgan?
Yeah, so we get asked this a lot. I would say 90% of our clients at least come to us for SEO value. And this is why, when you're doing outreach through HARO, you don't have any control over the narrative. You're going to be essentially quoted for a few sentences, which is great, because you can also say, you can have that sort of social proof on your site saying, as seen in, Huffington Post, as seen in Forbes, as seen in Wall Street Journal. But in terms of actually promoting the article itself as PR, it's very difficult. Generally, I lean towards the more of HARO is an SEO value. I personally see SEO value in no follow links as well. So to me, it's not necessarily a negative thing to get those no follows, but I think for if your goal is strictly PR, I'm not saying that HARO is not an option or something to add, but I wouldn't go into it with that mentality strictly necessarily. So
Yeah.
unless you want to have that social proof that I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly right. Because of course that includes that creates a lot of brand visibility and add a lot of credibility as well, to mention out all those, like as mentioned, as seen on Huffington Post or maybe the Business Insider, because that builds a bit of a trust among the people. So I don't know about others, but I guess with in the SEO industry, that kind of things do matter a lot, and especially when you're dealing one-to-one with the client. So yeah, I'll definitely try. Love to give it a try for myself.
Yeah, no, it's worth the time. And some of these articles get really great traffic too. Speaking of PR, we had one Business Insider article that we did that was published, over a year ago now, and they've updated a few times, but it still gets about 2,000 to 3,000 visits a month, and our client is linked in there, so they're getting direct traffic from that, not just the organic, SEO goal traffic. So
just a quick info for my knowledge bank. I mean, like when it comes to the HARO, does it mean like the journalists are always going to do it from the new articles, or does they actually try to pitch and ask for any kind of pitches for the aged articles as well? So let's say there is an article and they think like it's a time to actually update the article. So maybe that was last published in 2017. They believe like the article, we can add a bit of a freshness into that. So do they actually come with some kind of idea like, all right, give us a snippet and the article is already aged, so we're gonna go and slip it in?
it's happened, but it's rare. The overwhelming majority are going to be new articles. We have seen it happen, but it's not common.
All right, so that's another question. What I really want to know, it's because we work with about like 200 plus SEO agencies that are not, I mean, like a total client. So it's about like 30 to 40 SEO agencies with whom we are working, and we know like the time is always a constraint. So I know the way you have mentioned, it's pretty awesome. So is it really worth it? What do you reckon? Because I guess it is pretty excited in a way, because we are getting the backlinks. Otherwise, the retail price of those kind of backlinks would be in thousands, obviously, because getting backlink from Business Insider or something. But at the same time, we got like those 5 weeks kind of a delay as well, as a rough kind of thing. What do you reckon about it? What's your thoughts on this one from your experience in the past few years working on HARO?
Yeah, no, absolutely worth it. I mean, you nailed it. Some of these links, and we had one. We got an AmericanExpress.com link, and the client was so happy because he was like, I actually bought one of these links before
Yeah.
you guys, and I'm embarrassed to say how much I paid for it. So, and I've seen the results in terms of traffic too. Especially with a lot of our affiliate site clients. We had one who has been working with us a while and just sold his site for quite a bit of money. The traffic's been going up. To me, it's a solid investment, and I like it because it's not something that to me feels risky in terms of algorithm changes in the same way that guest posts do. Where it's that, maybe it's a paid post. It can be, Google is always trying to just, differentiate between those. It really is earned media. Aside from the fact that we're ghostwriting on behalf of the clients, it really is, earned media on legitimate websites. A lot of them don't sell posts to begin with. So to me, it's a really
Well,
strong investment in
yeah.
terms of backlinks.
No, I reckon because I've seen like people selling out Forbes or Business Insider kind of links in $2,000 plus as well. And of course, if you go with that one, we probably don't need to do much work. Maybe they are doing it from their contributor accounts. We have no idea. But the way I can see is it's definitely the way to go. This HARO. So all in all, if you say the process itself is and it's a consistency we need to build as well, isn't it? So we need to find the relevant relevant pitches. So we need to see, all right, which one is worth looking in, and then simply have to go and start writing out the answers and everything to them.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys have any other questions, I can I can see the chat. So yeah. No, it's actually 3 emails a day. So yeah, every weekday minus US holidays. So it'll be the morning, afternoon, and then the evening emails, and it's all based on US East Coast time. So it's about 8 a.m. EST, 12 p.m. EST, and then 4 p.m. EST, I think.